I don't think if people realise how much hard work goes into doing a shot like that, chasing those emus with a big selfie stick, took a lot out of me. Anyway, we're going to go to bringing Wayne back on. He caused a bit of a stir last time he had on, and he speaks very fast. There's a lot of information coming out, so he's more than a one-man show. So we're bringing him back, and we're going to talk about property. G'day, Wayne. How you doing?
I'm very well. What I've got here, people will be interested in. That red is the actual green piece in the middle is the Midwest electoral district. Dodgy Roger and his crew of misfits have decided now they're going to go from Carnarvon all the way down to Lancelin and take control of that. Yeah, I'll put it out sideways as well. And the reason I'm showing you, because what they're trying to do, and it's always been the Labor Party's platform, that they're going to get rid of the states and replace them with 83 or 84 super councils. And that's what this actual thing is. So Dodgy Rogers stepped it up and decided he has the power to do it. There's only one problem. It's called Clause 8 of the Constitution. It says when the colony becomes states, the Boundaries Act no longer applies. So there are no boundaries, no electoral boundaries, no shire boundaries, no any boundaries except the boundary of your property held in fee simple. Now, when you look at the Constitution, page 286, it clearly says, and it's O'Connor putting it to the convention, he said, if it was asked of a politician, what is the highest authority in this country? He would say the state constitutions. That leads near the truth, but it does not reach it. Because the truth is, the supreme, absolute, and uncontrollable authority remains with who? Us, the people. We are the Commonwealth. We become the Commonwealth on the proclamation of the Constitution on 9th of July 1900. Last week, I spoke about this little thing. I'll bring it as close as I can. And it's the Constitution put in place with 32 sections missing by the Parliament. It's difficult here. Can you read it at all?
Yeah, Constitution Act 1889 to 1980. And because it's been redone, approved for a reprint 30th of April 1982. Now, the big problem with this is when you go to section 52 and 53, it says the legislature shall maintain a system of local governing bodies elected and constituted in such manner as the legislature may from time to time provide. Well, that wasn't in the original one. That was added. What was in the original one is here, and it says 52, the colony shall be divided into 5 electoral divisions, each returning 3 members to serve in the Legislative Council, that is to say, and this is all of this. This is the letters patent put in place by Queen Victoria. That, as I explained last week, they removed all that, and with the 32 sections, and you can see it's an official, actual document. And I'll just show that over here. Did they remove all that with the? Did they remove all that with the referendum?
No, they couldn't.
That's what I'm thinking.
They cannot. No one can remove this as a letters patent. Only the monarch can. Now,
yeah.
What they did is they were sneaky. As I said, John Forrest was just as big a cook as Dodgy Roger, our current premier. Now, what they've done a lot more than that, and I've got all the documents to prove it. I brought them just so somebody could have a look and see that I'm not just mouthing off. The actual documents are here. Now, Collison said the other day that they got the Transfer of Land Act 18, but he didn't know, he forgot 1893. But all those acts, the Constitution Alteration Act of 1899 and the Police Act 1892 ceased to exist on the proclamation of the Constitution on the 9th of July 1900, because that's when the Enabling Act came into force, which is the Commonwealth Constitution Act 1900 UK. That's exactly what it is. Now, it's an enabling act. Is that our Constitution? No. Our Constitution is the wording of that as a Constitution and not as an act.
And everyone says the Commonwealth Constitution Act. And I heard it several speeches by people over the last few weeks, and they say it's the Commonwealth Constitution Act 1901. No, it's not. How can you have an act as a constitution when the people are sovereign and supreme? You can't. And this is where the problem started. As I said last week, we don't have anywhere in our constitution, we never granted permission for the parliament to control land. Page 795 is very clear. If an authority isn't granted to a parliament, it's denied. That's in page 346. But that section says if you exercise authority, you have to show in the constitution where it comes from. Well, with this little baby, the one with 32 sections, they added in 1979 an Act 88 of 1979, which states clearly they can put local government in. Well, where did they get off removing that was put in by Queen Victoria? They removed section 52 and 53. People have to understand the Constitution Act is subjected to the overriding authority of the Constitution. Once the Boundaries Act was blocked from being used at state level under Clause 8 and put exclusively into the federal parliament under the same clause, the Commonwealth was established. The Commonwealth is established by the Constitution Act, the Enabling Act. And the reason I'm talking slower so people won't think I'm running off at the mouth and forget everything that I'm saying, because I want this to be clear.
Yeah.
There is no parliament control over land, nor can there ever be until they abolish the Act and we grant them that authority. Now, why?
By a referendum.
No, you can't touch that Act. The Act is cemented in by letters patent. The Constitution, we only have the power under 128 to alter it. They cannot, the Commonwealth can't give authority to the states over an issue that's not in the Constitution. They have no power. The states cannot empower a so-called local government, because the local government that's mentioned in the Constitution on page 935 is the state parliaments. They just said, we got the state parliaments created by the Constitution, so we're going to add local government. No, you're not. So when you did, the law is a nullity and affords no obedience. We can ignore you. That's what I do. That's what I've been doing. Now they come along and they penalise you when you ignore them, even though I won the court case. The magistrate said clearly, I can't give you authority to remove his property off his land. That's the first part, which they were trying. I actually added the ownership of the land in there, so he had to deal with that. And he said, and I can't give you authority over who owns the land. So he knocked their case out for me, because he said, I have no authority to do it, nor he does. See, our law, a supposed law by the state parliament, is the Supreme Court Act of Western Australia, that only a justice of the Supreme Court can change the position of a title from one owner to the other. And when you go into the local court, Landgate, it says there, has to go to, even to put a caveat on, has to be signed off by a justice of the Supreme Court. Well, that would be nice if we had a justice of the Supreme Court, or even the Supreme Court. We don't have one. When you look at page 701, it's got a diagram on there, and it's got all the wording, and then the diagram of how it works. We got an executive, which is the governor in council at state level. We got a legislature, which debates and passes laws according to the provisions of the Constitution. And we have a judicature, which implements those laws made pursuant to the Constitution, because a law made pursuant to our Constitution binds the Crown in those issues. If they pass a law that interferes with England, or the English Act, we can go straight to England, to the Privy Council, from state courts, or from the High Court. And because we've got no lawful federal parliament, that's why I'm going to come to that in a minute, I made it unlawful, because it was unlawful under the Constitution Act and the Constitution, because we didn't have the 6 states to create, whose representatives create the first federal parliament. Why is that so important? Because that's our safeguard. Every election must be done state by state from a pool of people selected by the governor of the state. Nothing to do with political parties. That's treason and fraud. Now, they now have the problem because unless the governor of the state selects a pool of people, we can only vote for one person once. Now, all this preferential voting, you know, to show you what a foolish, stupid statement it is, how can I vote for, say, you, but I prefer someone else?
Yeah, yeah.
You got nuts, or prefer up to 12 people on the current voting papers. I don't prefer anything. Why then, if the Constitution says I can only vote for one person once, and by the way, that's Chapter 1, Paragraph 8 says for the Senate, I can vote for one person once for the federal Senate. Paragraph 30 of the same chapter says for the House of Representatives, I can vote for one person once. And they say, oh, no, we've got all these, we've got an opposition. If you've got a House of Representatives and those people represent you, Mitchell Sard, you're correct. There is no office of Prime Minister in our Constitution. No, keep going. Now, if the House of Representatives is there to represent you, how can you turn around then and say, oh, we've got an opposition? Are they opposing us, or are they opposing those people, or are they opposing the selection of them under our Constitution, all of which would be an abusive process and blatant treason? We don't need to pay 5,000 politicians, for instance, when we only need 100. If those 100 are there representing us, they should have to go to their constituents, and we say to them, all right, we need to have a referendum because, for instance, we want to give Aboriginals a voice. Now, no one did that. So how did they get the Prime Minister, who doesn't exist in our Constitution, how did he then propose a referendum? Because he has no authority. And because the Governor-General swore an unlawful oath and he was appointed on a fraudulent 1985 letters patent issued by Bob Hawke, who became the Queen of Australia, as I read last time, out of their own book. Now, it doesn't matter. The politicians can't change the Constitution. That's their green Constitution they eventually put in place. So that answers that question. But I'll come back to it.
That's that fact there, isn't it? The first fact ever was we've got a constitution, an original constitution, and it can only be changed by a referendum. That's it.
That's correct. Yeah. And anything else is a lie. Well, that original
everything else is
this
bullshit.
One. Yeah.
Yeah. This
is proclaimed and gazetted as our Constitution, as a direct text of the Commonwealth Constitution Act 1900 UK. So you can't touch it. This is a letters patent for the Office of Governor. 1986, Western Australia decided, we can change the letters patent for the Office of Governor. Well, the big problem with that is under Section 72 of the Constitution. This is mentioned in there, in our Constitution. They decided that the letters patent for the Office of Governor can be changed. Well, when you go into Section 72 of the Constitution, it says the Governor-General shall select all judges for federal courts and the High Court. And they have to swear the oath of allegiance contained in the Constitution. Not a problem. But then what they decided, and it doesn't exist, they would then just select them themselves. Well, it invalidates the High Court. But let's get back to the actual act. It says in our red book, but that section or this section doesn't of necessity apply to the states, because each state has its own letters patent put in place at Federation, which sets up the office of Governor of the States. That's Section 72. Now, Section 42 says every senator and every member of the House of Representatives, before they take their seat in Parliament, must swear the oath contained in the Constitution before taking their seat. It says that. It's a bit slightly longer text, but that's what it is. I shortened it to annoy them a little bit because it's a thing. Now, this is a letters patent It says letters patent, passed under the Great Seal of the United Kingdom, constituting the office of Governor of the State of Western Australia and its dependents in the Commonwealth of Australia. The Governor may constitute and appoint in our name and on our behalf all such judges, commissioners, justices of the peace, and other necessary officers and ministers in the state as may be lawfully constituted or appointed by us. And that's under 1 William and Mary. Every single one of them have to swear the oath of allegiance. Well, where's the magistrates? This is what you started off. And the second last paragraph says, the governor is the highest authority in every state and must be obeyed. Must be obeyed. And that's by letters patent. So how did they get around that? They just ignored it. So after discovering what they ignored, I decided to have some fun with them on the 7th of January 2019. And I produced this document, which is a lawful seizure of the 3 lawful tiers of the federal parliament. I'll try and get it as clear and up. No, you've got to go the other way. Yes, there.
Yeah.
Now, I'll read it because everything that's in here is binding on the parliament, cabinet, government, whatever they want to call themselves. Because it says lawful notice of seizure of the 3 tiers of federal government under the authority of Clause 61 of Magna Carta. And it says lawful notice of seizure of the 3 tiers of the federal government of Australia as established in the Commonwealth Constitution Act 1900 UK and the Commonwealth Constitution 1901 and hold them under the Crown and under the authority of Clause 61 of Magna Carta for and on behalf of the people of Australia who are the Commonwealth. And we are. Now, and it says, I, Wayne Kenneth Glue, CPO, OWB, Commonwealth Public Official, living, breathing man, do formally seize the 3 tiers of the federal government as established in the Commonwealth Constitution Act 1900 UK and the Commonwealth Constitution 1901 and hold them under the Crown for and on behalf of the people who are the Commonwealth. It has to be done this way, even though it's a little bit rhetorical. Further, I formally seize all the assets of the Commonwealth of Australia as established under the Commonwealth Constitution Act 1900 UK and the Commonwealth Constitution 1901 and grant them back to the people of Australia who are the Commonwealth to hold under the authority of the Crown for and on behalf of the people who are the lawful Commonwealth. Further, I formally seize the unlawful green annotated Constitution of the Australian Commonwealth, Quick and Garran, called the Revised Edition, LexisNexis Butterworth, which purports to be our Constitution, but is in fact a forgery, which I hold in a state of fraud until it is proven in a lawful court, sitting under the monarch, our lawful court, and they remain in a state of seizure, unable to be used until proven to be lawful and compliant with our Constitution. Further, I, Wayne Kenneth Glue, CPO, OWB, Commonwealth Public Official, living, breathing man, seize all laws, acts, statutes, rules, regulations and orders proposed by or passed by the fraudulent political parties posing as a lawful government when they are not, and hold all such laws, acts, statutes, rules and regulations and orders in a state of fraud until a lawful court sitting under the authority of our monarch deliberates on their authority, dated the 7th of January 2019. Now, there's a lot more attached, but this went to England because the House of Lords is the keeper of Her Majesty's realms. Now, why did I do it? Because we don't have a lawful parliament. I've explained that how they put an unlawful state constitution of Western Australia in place when they overthrew the other one. Now, by doing that, Western Australia has never been lawfully constituted. It's been established under 107, 108 and 109 of the Constitution. Now, this is where the problem starts. We have an executive. Where is it? We have a legislature. Where is it? We have a judicature. Where is it? They created the High Court Act in 1979, took out our High Court because it's now part of the federal parliament. Where's the separation of powers demanded by Chapter 3 of our Constitution? They're not there, so they're lied.
I get it.
Now, when I put that to the High Court, it's vexation, malicious and abusive process. The reason they talked about the cabinet, there's no such thing as a cabinet, unless that's where you put your grog when you're sitting in Parliament, because it has no legal position. The governor of each state selects 10 from the lower house, 8 from the upper. They form the executive council of the state. Executive council. Now, that executive council holds all the portfolios granted them to the governor of the state, and that changes every 3 or 4 months, until the parliament otherwise provides. It can be longer or shorter. The reason that is because those 18 people are representing the state of Western Australia and all the other states, or the state of Western Australia at the state level. Now, they have to be able to sit in the parliament. So every 3 months they change. But while they hold those positions and the portfolios, they cannot vote in the federal parliament according to our constitution because they're deemed to be biased towards their portfolios. So it can't be corrupted by politicians or the advisors to the politicians who are corrupting the system anyway. They're corrupt. Now, at federal level, it works exactly the same way. When Billy Hughes was in place, he issued conscription and preferential voting and then tried to knock out statute of monopolies. 9 times he tried in his little seat. When you look at this, what he tried, every time I looked at that thing where they were crucifying our soldier for what took place in Afghanistan, what was he doing there? Who sent him there? The Governor General in Council on the advice of the monarch? No. Read Section 68 of the Constitution. The Royal Australian Army, Royal Australian Air Force, and Royal Australian Navy. Well, why? Because it's Her Majesty's or His Majesty's Army, Navy, and Air Force. So who gave the Parliament, which is only a legislature, the right to take control and send them overseas? Billy Hughes did, using conscription. That means every politician that's ever sat in Parliament while they've sent our military and that overseas is guilty of their murder if they get killed there. The big problem is everybody is running around voting for this political party or that political party. And what they're trying to say is we've got all these political parties. We've got 3 tiers of government in this country, federal, state, and local. Well, state and local is the same one. We're the state, and we're not sitting in the parliament. We, the people, are the state. What the state is the people in a designated area defined by a fine line, which is irrelevant because it's not a boundary. It can't be. Why is the Constitution set up that way? So the federal parliament has always said, and they've maintained for a long time, that it was the idea of the framers to create a centralised federal government controlled the whole country from Canberra. That's a lie. Now, this is the problem. The states, the 6 states, always have the authority to control the federal parliament through their legislature or their representatives. When they sit in federal parliament, they do so as representatives of the states. They don't go there to form the federal government per se. They form the federal legislature. Now, the whole idea of that is if the states don't agree with the legislation going through, they just don't pass it in the federal thing. Now, what they're trying to do is say, oh no, the federal parliament can override. No, the federal parliament can't override nothing. One of the big problems is the federal parliament is going in there as a political party who won an election. They're traitors. When they go there, they are going there to vote on behalf of their constituents in relation to legislation they are proposing that they put to us before they went there. Can you comprehend that one? It's a little bit of a long thing. That's why I slowed it down. We, the people, go to our local politicians and say, look, we can reduce the taxes because the government doesn't need that much money. The Constitution says all money in excess of the federal government's debts must be returned to the states in accordance with the head of people, the number of people. But they're not. They've decided they can give it all away overseas.
Yeah.
They don't like that because they can't give 1 red cent to another country without getting permission from the people who own that money. Why isn't it returned to the states for the benefits of the states? Because the liars sitting in Parliament, the Labor Party is run by the Fabian Society. It was created in the late 1800s by the Fabian Society. They go back to the French Revolution, the Bolsheviks in Russia. They are there for the destruction of the monarchs of the world, the monarchies. There's no other reason. It's a lie if they say otherwise. Their biggest problem is, while we own property, they want to take it off us. But they got no control, so they created it, which is a lie. The only reason they get away with it because somebody, they go around, they send you a notice, and it's only an offer to pay, and you go and pay it. But I didn't. When I went to court, they said I owe them 148,000 odd with interest and everything else. How do you have interest on something you haven't proved? And they didn't prove it because they couldn't prove it. I don't have to pay them to live on land I own. They're saying now, under Torrens title, you own all aspects of the land in fee simple, but you don't own it. But if the council takes it off you and they hold the land, they hold it alienated from the Crown. Well, hang on. How come ours isn't alienated from the Crown when the law says it is? It's Real Property, 3rd edition. It says it's alienated from the Crown in fee simple. These people that call themselves politicians are lying, thieving traitors. And I call them maggots because they always put themselves up here. And the Bible says you put yourself up here, you're down there. The lowest place is in the sewer as a maggot, and that's all you are, lying maggots. And Dodgy Roger is no exception. I knew what he was before he went into politician. It was nothing better than a union thug.
How have we got here? How have we got here over the decades that people have just ignored these fundamental laws?
Because we're told in school they won't let us do it. And because when you get out of the school, you think, you can't do that because they're not going to let you. I said they can get nicked. I'm going to do what I like because our Constitution says I can do whatever I like as long as what I do doesn't hurt others. I've always been that way. I guess I'm in that area obnoxious to most people because they say, the government says you've got to do this. Well, they're not our government. They're a parliament. They don't wield authority over us. We wield authority over them. Their laws are passed for us, not over us. Yeah. So shove it. I'm not doing it.
Because I have to admit, that's what I'm seeing now. Australians are acting like serfs. The government says jump, they jump. They don't.
They just say jump and they how high.
Yeah, they don't feel they have any power. And then they attack anyone like you who challenges their belief.
I've got broad shoulders. Have a go at me. I don't care.
Yeah,
you can have a go at me all day.
It's really interesting that we've got to this position that so many people feel utterly powerless, and yet the power is ours legally.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's uncontrollable. We have it. And until people stand up and say, you're not going to do what you say, we're not going to do it. We're not going to follow it. You can shove it.
Can run on for a long time, run on for a long time, run on for a long time. Sooner or later gotta cut you down, sooner or later gotta cut you down. Go tell that long-tongued liar, go and tell that midnight rider, tell the rambler, the gambler, the backbiter, tell him that God's gonna cut him down, tell him that God's gonna cut him down.